Welcome to the Indie PPC podcast. I am your host, Joey Bidner, and in this episode, we're going to discuss using customer and product reviews in your Google Ads. I want to do an overview of the three main types of customer reviews and discuss why two of them are often missed in most Google Ads accounts. We're also going to answer a question from a listener about where I see ads going in terms of its integration with AI mode. And lastly, we're going to review an article outlining a recent update to the demand gen algorithm that might completely change its originally intended purpose and place in our account structure. So the reason why I want to talk about Google reviews is I find for the most part they're a little bit underused. And that's because account managers will sort of start and stop at the Google My Business integration, bringing in your Google Maps listing as an asset on your search campaign. And with it comes the reviews that you have on your Maps listing. And yes, these reviews will show on your search campaigns. But if you're doing Google Shopping, none of these reviews will appear on your shopping ads. And in regards to its place in search, one thing that I want to bring up is the intended nature of Google My Business and these map listings is to highlight local presence. So I personally believe that the use of the location extension with the reviews in a search ad is triggered by Google when they detect local intent on the search. Now, I can't confirm or deny this, but we all know that assets and extensions, we don't really have control or even visibility on if or when they're used. Or we can see the data on it when it's used. We don't have control when. And I personally believe that Google will identify the intent of someone's search on if it has local intent or not, and use those listings then. That's my personal opinion about it. So this is why we want to look outside of just these GMB, that's Google My Business, asset listings, and use Google's full tool set on using our social proof in our ads. And that's what brings me to the next point, which is seller ratings. So seller ratings were primarily made for Google Shopping, and you see it as an option in your Google Merchant Center, but you can still use it for search. It's not just shopping, it shows on search as well. And it's essentially a post-purchase survey that you or Google send to the customer after they buy your product or sign up for your service. And that star rating will then be used in your shopping or your search ads. Now, there are two ways to collect data for seller ratings. First is Google has its own seller rating collection service that's free. You can find it, again, to set up in your Merchant Center account. And the way it works is after somebody purchases something from you, right after their checkout, they're going to be asked if they want to participate in a follow-up survey. And if they say yes, we get to choose how much time they will wait before sending a follow-up survey. But after they receive the product and use it or receive the service, Google can then send a follow-up email asking about their experience with your business. And this is the seller rating information. Now, the downside with using the free Google service is there's no control over the messaging, the wording, and the visual display. It's got no branding, but that can sometimes be seen as a positive because it can also come across as neutral. It doesn't come across as you, the business, asking for your own reviews. It's Google asking for the review. But again, it requires that opt-in, which is a huge downside. Now, if you want to go the paid route, Google gives you the option to use a verified aggregator, as they call it. And this is basically a third-party service like TrustPilot that you use to collect these reviews yourself. You don't need that initial opt-in like the Google service requires, and you can brand it however you want. So in a nutshell, that's how you can collect these seller ratings and tie them to your search and your shopping campaigns. So if you're not sure if your client has seller ratings set up, Google does give us a lookup tool where there's going to be a link that I'm going to put in the show notes, and throw that into your browser. And just at the very end of the link, you're going to see in brackets your website, take that out and put in your URL. And that's going to show you if Google has detected that you have seller ratings associated to your Google Ads account. So I would say for your accounts, if you're not sure if they have it or not, use that URL to see, because sometimes, especially if you're using an aggregator, it can be a little bit confusing on if you have them imported or not, because in Merchant Center, there's not really like this like upload feature. It's more like when you have your aggregator, like TrustPilot, for example, Google is going to automatically match it to the URL and domain that you use in the setup and automatically pull it in. So the integration is actually wickedly easy, but it can just be a little bit misleading on the surface. And if you have that set up, then you don't want to enable the Merchant Center review collection for seller ratings. So you'll want to determine if they're using it at all, and if so, which service is being used. And if they're not using it, you can decide on which one to go with, as I explained the pros and cons of each. Now, the last one is product ratings. And this one's pretty simple because it also uses an aggregator. So you would have a service like stamped.io, judge.me, or TrustPilot, though TrustPilot does have slightly less customer review options. But you will need to use an aggregator for product reviews because Google doesn't offer a packaged system like they do for seller ratings. But product ratings are unique because it's about the specific product, unlike seller ratings where it's about the experience as a whole, like that business reputation badge. This is the product review itself. And each product, in order to display it, you need, I believe it's 3 reviews per product to display. And one thing to keep in mind is if you have Shopify reviews, do not assume that these will import to your Google Ads, because they won't. Shopify is not an official aggregator. So your Shopify reviews at the product level are not being imported automatically to your Google Ads. The good news is if you use an aggregator, you can import those reviews to the aggregator, so you're not starting from scratch. So again, when it comes to the product ratings, get an aggregator on board. For seller ratings, choose between the aggregator and the Google administered system. And when it comes to local reviews, obviously import your Google My Business listings. So one question that I get a lot when it comes to customer reviews is, how do we remove bad reviews? In short, you cannot remove a bad review. And if you come across some weird black hat strategy on removing bad reviews, ignore it because it's not worth getting in trouble with Google. I think the best way to deal with bad reviews is personally reaching out to the customer that left it. And you want to have a conversation with this person and maybe offer them something in exchange for removing the bad review, or even just having a bit of a heart to heart. Sometimes customers just want to be heard and validated, and you can seriously change the tone of a customer if you maybe recognize their frustration and just offer them something to make up for the bad experience, because customers can retract or change their bad review. And I'll be honest, this has happened to me before. I had left a bad review of a service that I had. I was reached out to by the business owner. We sorted it out, and then I ended up leaving a good review because we had that moment of acknowledgement, validation, and a little exchange of something sweet. So, and I have seen this work effectively for some of my clients. So I'll say that is the best way to deal with a bad review. So another thing I want to say that I think is important as an ads manager is to keep an eye on the reviews of a business. This is not something that's really thrown in our face, as usually you need to go into GMB or have access to the TrustPilot account to see them, for example. But bad reviews can seriously affect your conversion rates. And I have a situation with a client right now, for example, where because of some aggressive scaling that they as a business did this year, some stuff just slipped between the cracks, and the customer service let down a number of clients that ended up leading to a number of bad reviews. And we could really feel the impact on our ad performance. But without keeping an eye on these bad reviews as they came in, I would have just spun my wheels with the data, not really understanding why our conversion rates were so low compared to last year, as all the other metrics didn't really fluctuate. It's not to say that it's just finding somewhere to point blame, but it can help give you some clarity on the situation, as bad reviews do have a direct correlation to how people interact with the business, and in the end, if they're going to convert. So I say it's important for ads managers to just keep an eye on reviews and the flow of them coming into the business. So now I want to discuss a question from a listener. So our question today comes from Ian Binnick, who messaged me on LinkedIn. And Ian asks, what do you think Google Ads will evolve into? Specifically, how will ads populate once AI mode becomes the norm? So this is a great question. And to be honest, I don't think all that much is really going to change in terms of how we buy ads, at least. One thing is for sure, ads will be in AI mode. Trust me when I say they're not going to be giving this away for free. And it's kind of like when Facebook first launched. It had no ads for like 3 years. So right now they're just testing the waters, slowly rolling this out, and the monetization model is going to be coming soon. And we're going to get more answers on how our ad buying is going to take place in this ecosystem. But to be honest, I don't think a lot is going to change from what we're seeing now change in Google Ads, where we're kind of moving away from this 2 to 3 word key phrase matching and getting into more long form intent search theme matching. And Google even uses that terminology in PMax, for example, search themes. And that's where I think Google's going. It's, because of the nature of AI, chat, GPT, and AI mode, people are having conversations with the platform. We can't just match to the words anymore. We need to match to the greater intent. And this is where I think search theme matching is going to come into more play, and using Google's AI to understand intent with a little more control. And yes, removing control from our hands at like the granular word level, but we're still going to be giving signals to Google on who we want to match for. So that's more or less where I think it's going. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we need to just be okay with this change of Google moving away from what we knew worked before and adopting a new process to what's going to work in the future. Because I'm a little tired, to be honest, of people moaning about the targeting changes coming to Google. As ads managers, we just need to be okay with change. And that is the single most important skill we just need to have. So another thing I want to mention is that in regards to ChatGPT, is personally, I think Microsoft Ads is actually going to have the first ChatGPT placements as sort of like a partner network. Seeing that Microsoft was a heavy investor into OpenAI, I think this is going to be its first ad delivery network to test out the waters as they more or less stage gate their ad rollout. I do think that in the future, ChatGPT might have their own ad buying platform, but if they do, it's going to come way later because it's something that requires a ton of investment, a ton of testing, and I think that they're going to use Microsoft Ads as the first foot in the door to advertise with ChatGPT. So I've been a big advocate for Microsoft Ads for a long time, and I seriously think it's going to be more of a major player. So get familiarized with it if you haven't already. So, by the way, if anybody wants to submit a question, just email me at info@joeybidner.com. You can comment on the YouTube video or just message me on LinkedIn like Ian did. Questions can be about specific account problems, topic requests. Just don't hold back. Ask me what you want to hear about on the show. All right. So lastly, I want to highlight an article on LinkedIn from Thomas Etchell. And Thomas talks about a recent demand gen algorithm update that piqued my interest. He basically says in this article, which I'll leave in the show notes, that demand gen is switching from its method of targeting, which could more or less transition demand gen from this high to mid funnel campaign type into a low funnel campaign type. And I'll be honest, this is a little frustrating to me because what I've loved about demand gen is that it's got its place in high funnel awareness driving, not low funnel conversion action chasing. Like that's what PMax is more focused on, right? PMax is this full funnel campaign type, but it's more weighted to bottom of the funnel. And that's why When you run a full build PMAX campaign, most of your budget is spent on search and shopping, and YouTube and display take less of a portion most of the time because it is more weighted in that low funnel part of the customer journey. And demand gen was pitched as a high funnel awareness type campaign type. Now, from what I understand in this article, it's basically saying that they're changing the algorithm to go after more conversion focused matching, product conversion focused matching. And again, this is just speculation, but I'm a little bit bummed if they're trying to make another all-in-one campaign type. Like, why does every campaign type need to do everything? Why can't they just chill and let a campaign type be for a specific thing? I'll give you an example of something that I really miss. Is there used to be a local campaign type where it was called local ads, and it's different from local service ads. That's not what I'm talking about. There was a search campaign in Google Ads called a local campaign type, and all it was a Google Maps listing campaign where you basically just plug in your Google GMB. You don't even give it much targeting, but you could assign a specific budget that you want to spend in Google Maps, and it was just for Google Maps ads. They took that out and put it into PMAX, and now obviously PMAX does everything. But it's frustrating when Google takes away these very specific campaign types that I personally love having in my structure as a specific dedicated place in my customer's journey. So long story short, it looks like there's some changes coming to demand gen. We'll see how these roll out, but I want you to all check out this article and let me know in the comments what you think, where you think demand gen is going, and what you think demand gen is going to look like after this update. So that's it for today's show. I hope you all learned something about the full scope of customer reviews, and please reach out if you want your question answered on the show. Again, you can message me on LinkedIn, email me, or comment in the YouTube video with your questions. All right, see you next time.